Hey guys, hope you're okay. Just reading the next chapter of my book. I just thought I'd say if my absence of not uploading any videos past few days did become noticed, I do apologise if you was waiting. It was just I spent the weekend away at my girlfriend's. I hope you're whoever's reading this. I hope I find you well and anticipating the next chapter, which is Chapter 8, An Exposure to Alienation. As I write this book, noticeably the themes I explore throughout my life had been one of friendship, a bold person would say a finding of a true sense of belonging. But like all souls that have a story to tell, not all of my teenage years I look back in fondness. There are many examples I could give that left me feeling alienated. I remember looking back at certain people on how they would treat me differently, especially when certain people contained the knowledge that I was autistic. I noticed people tended to either treat me as if I was fragile or worse. There had come times when people would talk about me in the third person when I was in the same room. So as you can imagine, I was incredibly reluctant to inform people about my... Do you know what? I don't even know what the word is for it myself. As I look back at people, they'd have their theories for lack of a better word, on what autism is. A disability, a learning difficulty, an affliction, or maybe even a condition. What is the correct political term for someone who is autistic? The truth is, after all these years, I don't even know. I remember having a conversation with someone and they explicitly told me that due to political reasons, someone who is autistic has to be considered with someone who has learning difficulties, not a disability. However, I admit it, as bizarre as this may seem, I remember the statement as bold as it was, but not the person who made it. I suppose the overall point I'm trying to make is, not a lot of people knew how to be around me. There were times, I do confess, I felt like a freak. Most of the times it was never intentional, although some of the times it was. As you know, my biological father got married, had another child a few years before with his now wife. So I guess in his mind he had repaired the mistakes he felt he made towards me by starting afresh. As I would still see him once a week, I noticed the snide comments got slightly more antagonistic, and even a bold man would say crueler. However, I do confess, I suppose I didn't exactly help matters, as a lot of teenagers tended to do at that age. I went through a very grunge phase, with thick long hair and a very shabby dress sense. I remember I would walk through the front door and he had a very dismissive tone in his voice and in his look. Looking back, I find the entire concept slightly heartbreaking. As I look back, knowing the type of mentality I had at that age, impressionable and naive was an understatement. But I remember at first keeping the fact I was autistic to myself, and attempted to maintain the only people that knew was the ones that had to know. I was terrified of being treated differently, as I knew certain people would. Suffice to say, I had been talked down to, ridiculed, and at times even been completely dismissed, almost as if I was beneath them. But the worst aspect of it was, I found a lot of people that would exhibit this potentially toxic behaviour towards me wasn't even consciously aware that they were doing it. Take for my example my biological father, who, like I previously stated, spent a lot of time belittling me. I suppose in his mind it was nothing more than banter. Admittingly, there were times I lacked the strength to wash it off like a water of a duck's back. And his words, like a few others, could sometimes pierce me. It could be me or my overactive imagination, but the similarities between my problem and a certain fictional programme on BBC that just so happened to be running at the time, I feel rather compelled to mention was that of Merlin, that he had to hide a certain secret, or at least he felt he had to hide a certain secret. So understandably so, I could relate to such a character. And although the reference is quite good, I do strongly advise any reader to watch it, as it is a good programme. However, getting back to the point, putting aside my overactive imagination, I do confess that after a while, after all the hurtful words that was said towards me had eventually taken its toll on my confidence. But because I felt so natural taking to the stage, the spotlight even, but more importantly making people laugh, I felt no one truly believed me when I say I lacked confidence. You see, I make another confession to my beloved reader. Irvine doesn't exist. Not really. He never has. He's a persona. A fictional character, if you like. The class clown that the rest of my year seemed to embrace was nothing more than a mask I hid behind, and sadly, I wore the mask for so long. I hid behind the persona's shield. I didn't know how to be anyone else. I never really thought highly of myself. Not really. People would frequently misinterpret my confidence as arrogance, and I suppose it was understandable. But the reality was nothing could have been further from the truth. The truth was I never valued myself, as bizarre as that sounds. I felt no one could truly embrace the more vulnerable side of me, so I hid it for a very long time. But as a result of my lack of self-respect, as you will, people commonly perceived it as humble and selfless later on. But I'm afraid I cannot take such credit. Just because you don't see the value in yourself doesn't mean you lack the ability to see the value in others. I hope you enjoyed this chapter, and I will try to upload 2 tomorrow. But as always, Dancing Bear out.